Hi there, Claire.
Hello.
It's
Yes.
Norma. Nice to meet you.
Hello, Norma. How are you?
I'm good. So, are you in London?
I am in London. Yes.
I was just there, and
Oh no, I missed you. Oh,
I
that's a
know,
shame.
I know. But I'm back and forth a lot, and I love it. So I was just curious as to where you might be in the summer.
Yeah,
Everybody's
last week I was in New York, so I think we were
oh,
passing
stop.
ships.
Well, there you go. So first of all, this is so great. There is so much about you that is so similar to the way I see myself, not in all of the wonderful things you've done, but in our interests. And I think the line in your bio that is my favorite, where it says the professional fulfillment, development, and success of women is particularly close to her heart. And I think actually at this point in my career, I realized that that really is sort of the main purpose of what I do. And I was wondering what your thoughts are about that.
Oh, it's a huge part of what I think about every day, not only when I'm designing, but even just my interactions with women, because I realize throughout my career, I've been always trying to push my own boundaries, but weirdly in the back of my head I'm thinking whatever achievement I get will help another woman behind me, hopefully. And that's something that I pay a lot of attention to in terms of the choices I make in my career, the way I negotiate my deals or my contracts. I think, if I get something a little better, that helps the next person behind me. And even, actually just today, I had a phone call with a company that does a lot of charitable, not, well, actually not charitable, I would say support work in terms of getting refugee women or women of war zone countries into the workforce after troubling times. And they do a lot of craftsmanship with jewelry and textiles, fashion. And I was trying to find out a way I could support them and amplify their message through an event I'm doing later this year. And it was just something where I constantly look for the connection and the way to do that. So that, in these times where still the fashion industry is dominated by a lot of men, I feel like it's still a huge part of my job every
Yeah.
day to
Yeah.
push the woman's voice forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've had uh, circumstances come about where, the opportunity to see the talent that women have and figure out a way to incorporate it into what could be a real business or a real opportunity. And the refugee women are really the biggest challenge for all of us to sort of help and sort out. And the wives and the widows of the Taliban are probably the most in need of support because, as you know, they are very low on the consideration of human life. And the there are people in the Middle East countries who actually created communes to train these women how to spin and make carpets and do things like that. So I worked on a carpet collection for these women. And it's just so uplifting when you see how people can just stand up straight and not have to cower and be in control of their lives and their children's lives. And it's really, it's very moving and it's very important for our soul and our own humanity to help wherever we can. And I agree with you. There are so many situations that come up and you think, oh, wait a minute, I have to do something about this. But you really have such a great kind of success history that's very inspiring. I think when you got one of the most influential people in the world by Time in 2019, come on, that's really pretty fabulous. And how did that come about? Did you know about it? What was how did that all come together?
Complete surprise. I
Yeah.
was so blown away when that came out, and in a weird way, that was one of the things where I felt that particular moment was a pinnacle. There was the royal wedding probably a year or two before. It was about a year before, and then to get this, I felt, wow, this is like two enormous kind
Right.
of moments in my career that are happening. And Time magazine, more than any fashion magazine, I think,
Yeah.
felt really special
Yeah.
because of its extraordinary history, the depth of kind of culture, and also political and business that they
Yeah.
cover. I felt to be nominated amongst the peers within those worlds and those types of roles and professions in the world was really an extraordinary achievement. And if anything, that was a sort of a prouder moment than a front cover of a fashion magazine,
Yeah.
because it really does make you understand that what I have been doing transcended fashion and went more globally. So I
Mhm.
feel that that made such an impact, not only for me, but also for a lot of the people in the industry that saw the presence of a woman fashion designer being nominated for that significance of role. I was, yeah, super proud of that.
Yeah, that I think being an influential person, not not, and I'm not diminishing what we do in our industry, but an influential person is really a big deal because it's not woman, it's not fashion, it's person, and it's global, it's universal. It's so special. And congratulations, by the way. I just think
Thank you.
that's a good one. That's one you keep in the bio, I think.
Yes,
And so you have three children.
I
um
do.
do you have girls? What's the
So I've
how
got twin daughters who
oh my
just,
God, oh, that's
yeah,
great.
twin daughters who just both graduated now, so they're 22.
Oh,
And
wow.
then, yeah, and then I've got a 14-year-old son. And so quite a big age difference.
Yeah.
One is Gen Alpha, the other two are Gen Z.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of straddling two kind of movements in terms of the
Yeah.
culture, but
Yeah.
very interesting because they've grown up in almost two different technological time
Mhm.
zones as well.
Yeah.
Because when the girls were born, we were sort of just getting into iPhones and into iPads.
Yeah.
They really didn't touch technology until they were maybe 7, 8, when they got like an iPod or something like this, versus my son, where it's innate from the very beginning. So it's a really different experience. And you see that playing out on how they digest information, how they look at fashion, how they look at culture, music. It is very different the way they consume it. So it's
Yeah.
very fascinating for me.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I love looking at the generations and how different each generation is. It's unbelievable how it really defines the culture for a period of time. And Gen Z, I think, have a very complicated history, because like you said, they kind of transition into this new way of doing everything through technology. However, they don't have a memory of what it was before in the way you do or I do. So they're still in the new experiment. And then alpha, wow. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they're just a whole other species. I really do believe that these children are different, because I think intuitively they are going to probably be part of the generation that ends up going to Mars and is in this other world that we don't even know about now. So
I
I'm
agree.
and
Yeah, I
do
think
you see
it's
that?
so different.
Do you see that with your son? Is like his vision about the world? What are you observing?
The speed is so much faster with him. So even my girls are very sort of technically literate and can do things at a far faster pace than I can. With my son, it's like it's completely intuitive. It's really almost like we would have traditionally sort of written an email or something and felt we were very in tune with technology from an email point of view. Back when that was introduced, he has layers and layers of technology that he is in tune with. So the depth of kind of dexterity, knowledge, ability to switch from one to the other. He has also an ability to be on 3 devices
Yes,
simultaneously at
yes,
once,
yes,
which
yes,
for me is just kind of
yes.
extraordinary in itself.
Yeah. No, I
And
love it.
you know,
I love it. I
it's
really do.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
is
I
he
wonder how fashion plays into that, because it really does make you think in terms of like his approach to fashion is very different. The way he consumes it, the way he thinks about fashion. And my daughters has been evolving, and they're now at that pivot point where they're really defining their style much more.
right, right.
Whereas he's still in the I'm just want to be comfortable zone.
Hmm.
And I think that for me, especially actually working at Uniqlo, where I am now, the
Right.
global creative director, and we talk about the aspect of comfort in daily life, especially with fashion. And that's why I'm such a huge fan of you, because you are like the original source of all
No.
of this. And I just have been a fan for decades. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
And
And that's why I love first of all, I love that that they're finding their style, but that he is believing in comfort. And I wonder if what you're doing and what I'm starting to appreciate more of what I've done and going back to that a bit, is that not the future? Is that really not the future? And would you be at Uniqlo now if you didn't think it was?
well, I think that's part of my reason for joining Uniqlo, and I really believe that it is the future. I
Yeah.
think, especially post-COVID times, and I know a lot of people talk about COVID as this particular shift and sort of almost like a cutoff of the old way of doing things to a lot of businesses and also industries shifting to a completely new dialogue post COVID. Weirdly, I feel like the fashion industry has been slow to shift to that. And if anything, if you look at a lot of runways, I still feel like we're dressing for a different time. And I genuinely, from where I am, as a person who's traveling the globe constantly, I'm on planes, I'm seeing literally the breadth of different people from all different cultures between Japan, between New York, between Europe, and consistently across pretty much all democracies, I see people choosing comfort more than ever before. And that
Yes.
means clothes that stretch, clothes that are
Yeah.
easy to wear,
Yeah.
clothes that have a relaxed volume and silhouette, fabrics that sort of have a softness to them. And I think for me, this is a real shift in the democracy of fashion, that we've gone away from just being the runway look and much more to what do I want to feel like in my clothes. And I think this is to me where the modern sense of fashion is moving forward, and particularly I see it through my kids who are in the younger generations. Comfort is a huge
Yeah.
factor in how they choose.
Yeah, I feel exactly the way you feel. I this weekend I was just looking at all of these beautiful collections, these extraordinary collections with gorgeous fabrics and amazing shapes and forms and art and beauty. And but then I say to myself, what who are we as an industry? What levels do we have? Is there an industry that appeals to the consumer, to the style of different generations, or are we creating art forms that are fashion for a more elite group? And that really is kind of weighing on me and trying to understand if our industry knows who we are at this point. It's like a pre-COVID. We say um, before COVID and after COVID, BC and AC, and so we're in the AC conversation here, and I feel more and more like I need to really go back to my roots and to what really who I am. And I never leave it, but sometimes I wander a bit. And I think you expressed it completely the way I have been thinking more and more in the last post COVID days, that this is really what it's about. People wanted clothes that felt like pajamas when they were home, and they never really wanted to get out of them.
It's true. Yeah. And I think what's interesting is one of the um, big pivot points I've seen here in the last 6 months, 9 months at Uniqlo is I launched a sweatsuit last September in the men's collection, and it was my second collection for men's here. And it was this very beautiful, it's a double face cotton fabric with a very special kind of let's say stitch in between that gives it this beautiful kind of sculptural feel, but it's very,
Mhm.
very lightweight. And I just did the sort of perfect volume hoodie and then a really beautiful cut sweatpant. Literally has been ranked number one and number two in the brand for the last 6 months.
Yeah,
Non-stop.
yeah. No,
And to me,
I
that
believe
says
it.
everything, It says everything to me about where people want to dress right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
And so I just feel from that information alone, that speaks volumes about where people want to go to shop, what they want to look like, the type of fabrics and the silhouette they're looking for. But more than anything, they're looking for chic comfort. I think
yeah,
this is really what I'm sort of boiling things down to. And I find that really exciting because I can bring a lot of my heritage in high-end luxury design and from a beautiful sense of cutting and silhouette and shape, but then bring it into something that's everyday. And I think
yeah.
that's the magic in a
Yeah,
way.
I agree with you. So I had a license in Japan for over 20 years, 25 years, and I was in Japan 4 times a year. And I cannot tell you how much I love that country. Tell me about your trips to Japan.
Oh, I mean, I have to say, I never get on the plane and complain.
I know.
It's one of those trips where I'm like, oh, I'm going to Japan.
Right.
And even though I travel there probably now about 8 to 9 times a year, so it's quite a lot. But I never tire of going. The culture, the
I
pace of
know.
life, the extraordinarily polite and civilized way that they conduct their everyday lives. There is a sort of genteel nature to things, which I appreciate so much. A sense of calm, safety, quietness. Even when you're in a restaurant and people are talking to each other, it's a different level of noise
Yes.
to have in the West. It's just
Yes.
you immediately feel calm when you're in Japan. I
I
can't
know.
explain, unless anyone's ever been there, you don't understand it. But when you're there, everybody leaves with a smile because there
Yes.
is tranquility that they have in everything they do, but then aesthetically so beautiful.
Oh, it's
Just
very,
the yeah, the
very,
consideration on every level between the way they present their products, the way they make things, the stores, the way they package everything. Every part of the experience is heavily considered and with aesthetics and beauty really brought to the forefront.
yeah, the detail is always incredible. And I just love everything about Japan. And every trip, like you said, I would look forward to it because there would be another great experience in humanity, just in the way people treat each other, the respect for everything, the respect for food, the respect for the work you do, for each other, for the company effort. It's really a lesson that could permeate the world right now. We would love for that to be shared everywhere. It would be very good for all of us. I think,
I
yeah.
completely agree. I have to say it's something that's very it's a subtle thing, but if you experience it, you really appreciate it. At the beginning of every meeting, they start with thank you for joining us.
Hmm.
And at the end of every meeting, thank you for your comments and all of your efforts. There's
Right.
always an appreciation moment. And I think that for me is the gratitude that
Hmm.
they bring to every step of their culture. And so it's through politeness, but that politeness makes you more polite, makes you more humble
Yes.
and more generous and collaborative. And I completely agree with you that that would be an amazing philosophy to bring to more parts of the world.
Yeah. When I first went to Japan in 1983, I was with a very big company, and they weren't used to working with women. And so it was a little awkward because I was the woman who owned the business and was also the designer. And it took them time to kind of accept me in that role because it was 80s were still 100 years ago in a lot of ways for women. And eventually we found our meeting point through baseball, which you may not be as aware of, but they love baseball. And I have been a maniac baseball fan the way you guys are for football. And so that's what broke the barrier between male female in hierarchy. And so I was then brought into these meetings earlier where we would talk about baseball for at least a half hour. And from that point on, my relationship with them changed tremendously. And obviously the world is much different now. But even with that, there was a way to kind of adapt in a very kind way where it was still there was a difference between women's roles and men's roles. And
Mm.
so it was always like you said, it's about respect and just the experience of excellence is something everybody should be exposed to, because excellence really is worth trying to achieve. Really looking at how it can be better and how quality can be experienced by other people. And obviously, Uniqlo, I think, does it magically. It's very impressive.
Yes, it was that. That was one of the reasons that I think, for me, I was so excited to kind of be part of what they were doing, because when I visited there and I spent time and I started working on my first collaboration collection, I did have a certain kind of nervousness that, coming from luxury, is this going to stack up in terms of quality? I always have been a huge fan of the brand, and I bought in the past a lot of Jill Sanders pieces, which I love, and I
Right.
remember those were great. And I thought, well, if Jill's working there must be something good. But I always remember them talking about fabric. So I was really pleasantly surprised when I started to talk to them about the quality, and I had the first prototypes come back. And let me tell you, they were nearly 90% right the first time.
Really.
And I'd only just started working with them. Their attention to detail and the way they ask about the shape and how it should feel, it was the same conversation level that I would have in Paris. And I think for me, that really suddenly felt incredibly reassuring, but it also made me feel like there's a lot of possibilities here,
Yeah.
because that deep understanding of not only shape, and also the perfection through the details was really exciting to kind of play with. And the fact that, even for me, I would say, well, I'm looking for another finish here or another detail there on a particular drawstring or button, they'd suddenly put in front of me 5 different options that they'd
Right.
already thought of
Right.
before
Yes.
I'd even asked. And I just
Yeah.
thought, wow, this is magical. I love this.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's well, congratulations. That is such a treat. Earlier in our conversation, you mentioned negotiating. And so tell me about your experience negotiating in business, because this is one of my fascinations also. I'm curious what your take is on it.
I think it's a really important part, especially as a woman, in the fashion industry, to know your worth with your peers. And I know it's sometimes quite difficult to find information out, but over the years, I've figured out ways of finding
Yeah.
out. But it's very important, because once you know your worth, then you know your base level. And I think that there are some things where you then have confidence to say, no, that's not fair. That's not respectful.
Hmm.
I have this experience. I've done this, and therefore, this is my level. And I think when you're young, you probably are much more timid about that. But as I got older, I've really felt that it's important to kind of put those stakes in the ground and know, but you need to do it from a place of knowledge. It can't just be random numbers, as it were. I think that for me has been an important learning curve for me, but I feel that the more we can do that, because we all know across every industry that's a big topic, and the sort of equal pay, still they say that we could be decades away from that. even now as we sit here
Yeah.
in the 21st century. But it feels for me, especially, an important trail to blaze, as it were. And
Yeah.
well, I hope that I'm doing it for other women. But I feel that whenever I have women staff members, I'm always fighting for the little promotion or the bonus, and say they deserve it, they did this. I really think that they've done an equal job to, another team player who might be a guy on the team. And I think it's highlighting also the women and highlighting what they do. And often women work a lot harder as well. So I feel that that's an important conversation to be had, but I'm constantly fighting for women to be understood. The other problem that I think sometimes goes against women is because we are a little more gentle in nature, that when we negotiate, we back off quickly. And that's something that I think you have to learn to do, is to kind of be sort of standing your ground a bit longer. It's really tough. It takes years, but it's worth it because in
Yeah.
the end, it's fair. And I think, I'm always just looking to be fair. That's my goal in everything.
Hmm. Yeah. I think a good negotiation has to be fair. That is what a good negotiation is. And I love negotiating, but like you said, when you start, a lot of what you do. I mean, I started my business when I was 24, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was just so grateful for anything to be happening that, I would just go with the punches, and whatever didn't work, and I would deal with. But as you gain confidence, it really is important. And I think one of the things I think about is you have to be able to walk away if
Yes.
what you feel you are worth can't be met. You have to be able to walk away, and you have to believe it, because they will know that. They will just know it by the temperament you have, the way you present everything. And walking away is a big part of understanding a successful negotiation. And without saying a word about walking away, people will read it and will pick that up. And I think that's one of the tools in the negotiating toolkit that you have to really accept as part of the negotiation. I'm sure you've had that experience too, of understanding that there will be a line drawn somewhere at some time, and walking
Yes.
away is one of them.
Definitely. I think that's a really good point. And I think sometimes people feel, oh, but it is something I'd be really interested in doing. Why should I walk away? But once you sort of lower the bar is set there, and it's
Yeah.
so much harder to then, when you're in the position, to climb back up. And
Yeah.
so I think you have to start on the right foot right at the beginning, and also you just want to get it out of the way. You don't want to be thinking about that when you join a company, or
Exactly. Yeah.
when you start something. You don't want, oh, I wish I'd asked for this, or I wish I'd done that. You want to
Mhm.
start with that being behind you and you being happy. So I really think that that's a big psychological barrier for a lot of people as well. And them being unhappy with something when they join, I feel that I always want to make sure someone feels really comfortable. If
Yeah.
I'm hiring someone and we're talking about, the contract and the deal, it's so critical that I say to them, do you feel good about that number? And or the circumstances you're working in, or the flexibility, whatever it is, because it psychologically will affect them in the way they perform. So I think, to me, that's been a big learning curve, actually, in terms of making my team stronger, more creative, and just getting more out of people in a good way.
Yeah. I agree. I think I think people who love what they do will work with an energy tirelessly without you even thinking that's what they have to do. They just will. But when they're distracted by feeling, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can afford this, or I really should be compensated, then it starts to distract from the creative process and from what the team needs to do together. And you're right. I think having those conversations, and also I believe in rewarding people who go out beyond what they're expected to do. And I think the idea of bonuses is so important in a company, to say, "Wow, look what you did! This really meant a lot to the company." I think that the continuation of the appreciation is really important.
It
I
is
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
No, I totally agree. And I think, you know, when I've seen that as examples in my past, I mean, I remember when I worked with Tom Ford at Gucci, he really deeply appreciated the design team, and always after the show, even, you know, if one show got like so reviews and another show got incredible reviews, didn't matter, he would come the week after and he would say, you know what, great job, guys. You worked really hard. I'm really proud of the show. I'm really thrilled with what we did. I'm excited to move to the next season. And it was the gratitude and the thankfulness for what you went through, because you work, like you said, you go the extra mile. But we were always treated well, treated fairly, respected. And then, you know, if we did a great job, we were rewarded. So you had incentive. And that's
yeah,
the thing that I think is so important to everyone really enjoying the process and the journey of a business, is if you really feel part of something. So for me, I think it's a pretty cool part of
yeah.
the equation.
Yeah, I think Tom is just an incredibly generous person with just with his spirit, the way he works with people. He's a terrific guy. When you were in the process of kind of developing your sense of self and in what you do, and and at what point, I because this is actually a personal question. I'm curious about what your experience was. At what point in your development, like how many years into your career, did you say to yourself, "Okay, I'm here. I feel like I've earned this, and now is the next phase." There's that phase of figuring out who you are, faking it till you make it kind of thing, discoveries. And then it's like, okay, I got this. Now I've got this. Where was that for you?
Oh, I would say two different points actually, because I started my career under other creative directors, and then later I moved into creative director roles. So I had, I suppose, two different moments where that happened. So the first one, I would say, maybe even was a decade in, to working and designing, was when I got the job with Tom Ford, because I'd previously been at Calvin Klein and then I was at Ralph Lauren, two people I'm sure you know very well. And I felt, but both of those roles, I did completely different things. So I'd done women's wear at Calvin and men's wear at Ralph. So I felt like I was completely on a learning journey of both of those brands, and I wasn't really sort of let's say autonomously sort of thinking about things as a high creative. But once I got to Gucci, after about a year or two being there, understanding Tom, going through a few shows, I felt like, okay, now I feel accomplished. Now I understand. I've brought all my expertise from the last decade, and now I feel like I can actually roll. I can go with this and I can create autonomously. I can, build out whole collection. I can deliver it. I can do multiple categories. And that's when I felt like, okay, that was a really good point at that time where I felt super confident. And then I would say when I got to be a creative director, so after I left Gucci, I went to a small heritage house in the UK, in Scotland, called Pringle. And then after that, went to Chloe. And I would say that even that was another decade of learning. I went from UK based, very much a heritage way of approaching things through a direct factory, to Chloe, which was very much about Parisian, atelier, artisanal approach to ready to wear, and very woman focused, very much about fluidity. I had to learn an entirely new language of fabric when I arrived. I'd never worked really that much with georgettes and chiffons and laces and embroidery. And it took probably about 3 or 4 years. And about halfway through my time at Chloe, I hit the nail on the head. I was like, this is it. This is my language here. And I had like one show that just exploded. And that was when I was like, okay, now I feel good about this. Now I feel confident. And I always think, it's quite often the examples that are given in our industry are of these like unicorns, let's say. And they are these people who come out of nowhere, just hit the ground running and create incredible things, and with extraordinary creativity right out the gate. And I think those are incredibly wonderful moments in fashion and extraordinary people. But other people can do it. It happens in a different way. And for me, it was really about the learning journey and me discovering that moment and then really appreciating it. It wasn't like it was always there. I had to discover it. And that's my way of finding my path. And so I think it's one of those things that once it happens, then I feel like I'm flying. But I think that we have a tendency in fashion to think that everybody's like that. And the minute they arrive at a brand, it's just going to fly and explode and it's all going to be magic. But it doesn't happen that way for everyone. And some people need a bit more time than others. And so, yes, I think it's really important point to make that everybody is different. Everyone's an individual. We all approach things and time things in different ways.
I think from a longevity standpoint, the process. I mean, I love your process that involved not only changing countries, brands, each one is like learning all over again and taking you up another level with this new experience. And I think there's a form of disruption in that I find mandatory in life, that you need a little disruption to really bring you to the next place, the place you should be in. And your record is really an example of that, which now has you in Japan. And so that process is really impressive. But it took me 14 years before I felt that feeling that you're talking about, and I make it my duty to push myself in areas that I've never have, that are totally new for me. I'm into AI now, and I took a course at MIT to try to learn about it. And it's those learning experiences and trying to figure it out and trying to take who you are and this new exciting set of circumstances to create something that hasn't happened before. And you do that beautifully, and you've proven it over and over again. And the longevity attached to that is priceless. So I think one of the issues in our industry is that these hits, these big successes that come and just blow everybody away, are hard to sustain unless there's this disruptive change that happens where you become a part of this new thing. It's sort of your soul and that challenge get melded together, and something new and exciting happens. And I think it's a process. I think your method is one that I certainly identify with in my own way, but I think in the way where you see design have a long life and change with excitement, but not extraordinary in a way that may not be able to sustain. It's a hard thing. Fashion has great expectations. They want it now. It has to be big. It has to be fabulous. But without really becoming at one with what you're doing, and that takes a little time. I think it's very hard to sustain over a period of time. And you've proven it over and over again. And I love that it's through this international travel, not only in the culture of the brand, but the culture of the country you're in, and absorbing all of that. It's certainly a big part of it, as you expressed with Japan. What what's your thought about global fashion? How do you see this? I mean, if you were to sort of predict what people globally will look like in the future, in a time we don't know yet, besides what you're doing now, which has a certain longevity to it that's expected. What do you think we'll be thinking about in fashion globally in the future?
I think it's obviously going to include a lot more sustainability. And I think even at Uniqlo, we do a lot of work in that area. It's an important part of how we're going to progress over the next decade. And I think, with scale comes a lot of, obviously manufacturing issues, and also the way we procure materials. So we're being really diligent in making things that have a really strong um, chain cycle that goes through them, so that as much as possible we could try to be circular going forward. And I think a lot of that is an education piece as well, to try and understand where our goods come from and how we then interpret them into clothes consciously and carefully with respect. And I think that's a big part of the work I'm doing at the brand. But I think in terms of, I'm glad you brought up the fact that throughout my career I've worked in so many different countries, and I think that's been hugely educational and extremely influential on my work as a creative. Because when you immerse yourself in another culture, you see things from another point of view. And for whatever reason, Asia really was calling to me. And I think when this opportunity to work at Uniqlo came up, it instinctively felt aligned with what I was being drawn to. And now I spend a lot of time both in, obviously, Japan, the key place that I'm going to most frequently, but also in Korea, in China, and several of the cities across those regions. And we do a lot of work in Southeast Asia. and you realize how different the countries are between each of those different Asian cultures, but also that there is so much exciting things happening over there that we're not even seeing in the West. And I try and spotlight that a little bit sometimes through my social media and just show kind of what's going on over there. There's the style in Korea, in Seoul, is off the charts. I mean, for me, it feels like we were back in the 90s where everyone was really experimenting with style, really pushing the boundaries of the way they dress, really looking at the whole look, top to toe. And I think we've lost a lot of that in the Western world. It's sort of been homogenized a little bit because everybody buys a bit of luxury now. Luxury also includes a little bit of like dress down, more casual wear. And things start to sort of morph into very similar types of wardrobes in a way. But when I go to the East, it feels really different. And I feel, maybe I'm wrong, when you lived through this period, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But the 80s for me, I was growing up as a fashion student, and I just remember the East being so influential with Issey and Ray and Yoji and Kenzo and all these, and Kanzai, all these incredible Japanese designers, and the Asian culture just kind of turning everything on its head. And I remember when Issey first opened his store in London, and I was desperate to go and see it because it was so minimal, so clean, so much about cutting simply and stretch fabrics and unusual boiled fabrics, things that felt so different. And I feel that that is happening in Asia, but we are not seeing it yet because right now it really is street style over there, or it's, if you travel to those regions, you see it and all the young kids. And I'm so inspired when I go there because it feels really the future of kind of the way people are going to dress. And there is a bit of a, let's say, I don't want to say tribal because that's the wrong word, but there is this feeling of the like people having a certain group, sort of a sense of style towards a certain music culture or an art culture or pop reference culture. Maybe it could be manga, maybe it could be something else, but it's very defined, and I feel that that feels so exciting and very different from us in the West, where we've become so casual and relaxed in a sense of putting clothes together that it almost doesn't have a style in a way. It's a kind of a timeless moment. And I'm really thrilled to see this, especially coming from the East.
Yeah, I think Korea is the energy there. I absolutely love what's going on in Asia. I think um, the Asian culture is speeding into the future in such an incredible way, in so many ways. And when it comes to fashion, if you want to say there's a passion for fashion anywhere, that's absolutely where you'll find it. And I think the thing I love about Korea is I'm friends with this woman, Mickey Lee. She's from the Samsung family, and she discovered K-pop and has done many wonderful films and is really an extraordinary woman and promoter of Korean art, fashion, film. And I see through her the, she's sort of like the De Medicis for Korean art, and the freedom of spirit that you see, and also a defined expression of that probably started with K-pop, is clear and evident in Korea in a lot of ways. But you talk about Japan in the 80s. Well, that's when I was there. I was there from 83 on into, the 2000s. And so I got to know a lot of these people. And Kansai Yamamoto to me was just such a great original talent. And each of the expressions of fashion were just art forms. They were really expressions of art that turned out to be things people wore. And not only in the way the fabrics were prepared and developed, but in the the pleasure they had in doing things their way, not the West way. And not against the West, just pro their world, pro their experience, and the minimalist simplicity that was filled with beauty. I mean, it wasn't empty; it was filled with beauty, even though it was minimal and is minimal. Had such an impact on me personally. I mean, if you see the way I live, I mean, nobody really expects to see absolutely nothing when they come to my home, but it is incredibly minimal. And I've learned that that empty space gives me so much more room to be creative than filling it with all the things I love. And that's what I learned from Japan, is that that empty space is so valuable. It has to be beautiful and empty. But that was my learning experience, especially in the 80s, learning at that time in my life that there is something else going on that I am very attracted to, even to the point where I have Japanese food every day, Claire. I can't even explain why that happens. I mean, I could have it twice a day, every day, and people look at me and can we go to any other restaurant? And it's like I just love everything about it. What are your thoughts about minimal?
Well, it's interesting because I started my career at Calvin Klein right in his minimal moment.
Ah, yes.
And so it was hugely influential on me because I'd come out of school where I was graduating when Galliano or
Right.
McQueen, and it
Right.
was all this, couture exaggeration and very theatrical approach to fashion. And I ended up going to the other side of the world in New York in the 90s. And Calvin was all about minimize everything. Don't
Right.
less is more. I want like two things hung on a rail.
Right.
And it was so interesting because you realize then that those two things on the rail need to be exquisite and
Right.
they've got to be beautifully proportioned, the colors got to be stunning, and the feel of the fabric. He was the first person who introduced me to crepe fabrics. He was a huge lover of crepe fabrics. And
Mhm.
so it was always about like that softness of when you're looking at the runway collection, it was really the softness of the cashmere against the dry but draped feeling of crepe. And so I experienced minimalism very early on, and throughout my career I've gone through many different style changes because of the different places I've worked. But interestingly, it's almost like I've come back around again, now to this sort of very minimal aspect of my life just at the right time, because I feel like it feels so cleansing, and it's so lovely to have, like you said, the emptiness feels huge,
Mm.
and so just a really creatively exciting place. I think for a lot of people, a blank page can be really daunting, but I think as a creative, sometimes there's so many things you can be bombarded with, and having that clarity of that clean space just brings something that feels very focused. And I really appreciate that, especially
Yeah.
from Japanese culture. Definitely.
Yeah. When you were saying that, I was thinking clean house. It's the time now too, where we have to clean house on so many levels.
Mm,
I think globally, all of us, whatever country you're in, is like, we need to clean this up, right? It's a time
yes.
for this mentality, for this purity again. Claire, I cannot tell you how much I loved spending this time with you. I really enjoyed it. And from the minute I started to dig into a little bit of your background and everything, I thought, oh my God, I feel so connected to this person. There's so much that I feel the same about, and it really proved to be true. And I wish you continued gorgeous success in everything you do. I can't wait to see all the things you'll be doing at Uniqlo, and I'm sure I'll be a customer. I must admit, it's very appealing. I loved this conversation, and thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm a huge fan of your work too. So this has been just a delight to spend some time with you.
Oh, thank you. I hope we meet soon someday.
Absolutely. Love to.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Norman.
All righty. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Hey, press follow and leave a comment after you listen to the podcast. Thanks.